Alright guys, in 2 days the CrossFit Games start. No need to tell you that it will be hot. I just checked the temperatures in Texas for next week and it will be 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius, which is more than the human body temperature. As far as understood, there will be at least 2 events that will be held outside. Early in the morning and in the evening to break the heat a bit, but still it will be super warm. So in this video, I will talk about how the body deals with exposure to extreme temperatures during exercise. How an athlete can and should acclimate to heat before participating into something that extreme as the CrossFit Games. And at the end of the video, I will give an example on how a heat acclimated versus a non-heat acclimated athlete would do in a typical event at the CrossFit Games. So if you're ready for it, let's go! Hi everyone, I'm Gomar. I'm a senior scientist at ETH Zurich, based in Switzerland. And for the last decade or so, I studied the effect of exercise on the body and taught exercise physiology to university studies. And now in this video, I want to bring back some of that knowledge to you guys. So from the moment you start doing exercise, there are hundreds, even thousands of biochemical and physiological processes that are kicked off. And for the sake of this video, there's a massive increase in oxygen transport towards the working muscles. For example, your heart rate goes up to 190, 200 for some people. And importantly, the cardiac output, which is the amount of volume the heart can pump out per minute, goes from 3 to 4 liters in rest, like now, to 40, 50, even 60 liters in some athletes per minute, which is obviously pretty extreme if you think about it. Then at the site of skeletal muscle, there is a high ATP turnover, so energy turnover, and obviously utilization of all this delivered oxygen by the muscles. So that is well known because the goal of the muscles and of the whole cardiovascular system is obviously to convert chemical energy, which is fats and carbohydrates, also a little bit of protein, not so important here, into mechanical energy or propulsion forward. For example, doing your clean and jerks, running, biking, and so on and so forth. And interestingly, of the 100% of energy that is converted, only 20% is directed towards mechanical energy, so actually propulsion of the muscle. And 80% of that, or 75, is heat. So it is very important for the body to be able to cope with this added or this extra heat. And there are several mechanisms to get rid of this heat. For example, think about it, you are biking outside, the sun is shining, it's a nice 25 degrees. So first of all, there is extra radiation, so electromagnetic waves from the sun that could heat you up, right? Then there's also, importantly, convection and evaporation. Evaporation is simply sweating and convection is movement of fluids. This means that the small layer of air that is sitting on top of your skin is constantly replaced by new air, by cooler air, right? It is heated up by the skin and then replaced. And this convection, and that's also a way to cool down the body. And then there's also conduction, which is direct heat transfer between two objects, which would be, for example, the saddle of your bike or the handlebars of your bike. So there could also be some heat generation there. So the most important ways to get rid of the heat are definitely evaporation and convection. And this depends a little bit on how fast you are biking. In the beginning, when it's easy pace, when you're doing your walk outside or your bike on an easy pace, it will be predominantly dry heat exchange, this means, so convection. But then when the intensity goes up, it will be mostly evaporation until you are at very hot conditions as well as high intensity. 95% of all the heat that is dissipated will be coming from evaporation. So that's very important. It is very important to be able to sweat well as an athlete. We have to take that going forward. So maybe you remember the 2015 Games, the MERV event, which was very smartly done in the middle of the day in, I think, the Californian heat. At least it was super warm, and there were some athletes, for example, Annie Torresdotter, who suffered from heat stroke. And that is because their core temperature just kept increasing, 37, 38, 39, and even 40 degrees until the body kind of shut down, and that's actually very dangerous related to heat stroke. So the body wants to avoid that at all costs. So if an athlete wants to get better of getting rid of this excessive heat, he or she has to acclimate to the heat in the days, weeks preceding a competition. Because acclimatization to heat will increase the plasma volume, so you have more, not hematocrit, so not red blood cells, but more plasma volume, so the water part of your blood, to be able to sweat more. Actually, the goal of all this will be predominantly to be able to sweat more, because one, you will have more plasma volume, you will have more sweat rate, like the amount of sweat per minute or per hour will be increased, and importantly also the onset of sweating will also be faster. So not after whatever 15 minutes of work you will start sweating, but actually almost from the beginning or after 5 minutes an athlete starts sweating and already cooling down. For example, maybe remember one of the videos I did back in January with Jelle Hoste. I did a workout with him, macho man, not so important, and he was warming up for 5 to 10 minutes and was sweating like crazy. Just by doing some ski erg intervals and some clean and jerks, he was sweating like crazy, and I obviously as a non-athlete was not sweating at all, and this you already could see there very clearly to him. So the goal is to be able to sweat more, to cool down more. So let's look at some studies to understand what heat acclimation can actually do, not only in hot conditions, for example, during the games in Fort Worth, Texas, but also in cold conditions. So if you would, for example, acclimate to heat and then do your exercise in the cold instead of the heat, would it also give some improvements in performance because, for example, the plasma volume? Let's see. So this is one of the very nice studies on heat acclimation that has been done in the past decade. So they had two groups. One heat acclimated group, which was exercise 2 times 45 minutes with 10-minute break in between at moderate intensity at 40 degrees Celsius at 30% of relative humidity. So very hot conditions. 10 sessions of this moderate exercise or moderate biking. And then you had a control that they did exactly the same. So a group of 8 people, I think it was, did exactly the same, but at 13 degrees. And then they did some pre and post tests, some physiological, some cardiovascular tests, VO2 max test, a time trial, so as fast as they could, as well as a lactate threshold test. And they did this, and that is why this interesting study. They did this at 13 degrees, so in cool conditions, but also at 38 degrees, so very hot conditions. And then they want to see if there was actually a benefit of this heat acclimation towards heat. If you look at the results, this is really nicely depicted, I think. On the x-axis, you see the pre-acclimation VO2 max, so before they did their acclimatization protocol. And on the y-axis, they saw the post, or they put the post-acclimation VO2 max. You can clearly see that everything which is in the green triangle, this means that this subject has improved their performance. And the black dots are the ones that are in hot conditions, and the white dots are the ones that are in cold conditions. And you see two things. First, that the hot conditions are usually a little bit lower, obviously, because your VO2 max will be lower in the heat, in the extreme heat, pre and post. What you can see as a second part is that almost all subjects or volunteers improved, but also in the cold conditions, so in the white dots. So if you also have to perform in cold conditions, heat acclimation could actually be improving your performance. Very important and interesting, I found. Then they also have the control group, obviously, and here you can see they did not really improve because the dots are always close to the middle line, and on average they did not improve. Cool, so actually how is this happening? I kind of alluded to this already, and it has to do with cardiac output. If the heart can pump out more blood per second or per minute, then there will be in total, in absolute terms, more oxygen delivered towards the working muscle, and that is obviously going to improve your VO2 max and your overall cardiovascular capacity. All right, and you see this, that the cardiac output is predominantly improved in the cool conditions, so when the people did their test in cool conditions. Also, non-significantly, probably because it's quite difficult to technically measure this in the hot conditions. The cardiac output is one of the key elements of cardiac output is how much plasma volume you have, and only in the heat acclimated group there is actually a 6.5% increase in plasma volume compared to even a decrease in the control group. So that would be the key adaptation to heat acclimation is an increase in plasma volume that also leads to more cardiac output and more blood that you can push towards your working muscle. And that will obviously be performance enhancing. Good, let's do a little hypothetical test and see what would actually happen in a heat acclimated athlete at the CrossFit Games, someone who did their homework, I would say, and a non-heat acclimated athlete. And you see first the sweat rate, right? The sweat rate will in the beginning be quite similar between the red and the blue line, but the heat acclimated athlete will start sweating faster and also more in general, depending obviously how long the workout is and how hot it will be, but it will be very hot, so that's a no-brainer. But you see the onset as well as the total sweat rate will be higher compared to the non-acclimated athlete. And secondly, as I just said, also the overall cardiac output during a workout will be higher. Not only during the, let's say, the events where it will be super hot, for example, the run swim event in the morning of the first day, yes, but also in the air-conditioned events, because as I just said, also in the cold, there will be an improvement of heat acclimation by athletes. So I hope that the coaches know this and they did some good heat acclimation protocols to their athletes. For example, going towards Texas 2 to 3 weeks on beforehand and doing longer type workouts, because that's maybe something that CrossFit athletes tend to forget. The heat acclimation, at least from the studies that I read, need to be quite long. For example, in the previous study, it was 90 minutes of exercise. That's quite long. And at moderate intensity, because you want to learn how to sweat and learn how to dissipate this heat. One workout, for example, Fran or an 800-meter run outside will not do the trick. You need longer, lower intensity workouts, at least a large volume. Good, that was it from my part. Who do you think did their homework the best leading up into the CrossFit Games? I will go out in a limb and make some predictions. I think on the female side of things, I think Laura Horvath will win it all. I think she kind of erased enough of her weaknesses to be able to beat Tia-Claire Toomey. Let's see if I'm right. And on the male side, although I want Pat Vellner to win, I don't think he's going to do it. I think Justin Medeiros will take it home. He's just all around an unbelievable athlete, and I think he will do it. Who do you got? Put it in the comments. Always interested in knowing your thoughts. If you're interested in getting fit and also supporting the channel, supporting the page, just have a look at our training programs, well-structured, well-thought-out training programs to improve your functional fitness, both fixed programs like 12-week programs to get better at a certain aspect of fitness, or a subscription-based program where we go through the season to improve your overall season performance. Just go into the link of the description. There's also a code still running for 15% off. Good. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a little bit from this video. If you did, give us a quick like and also a subscribe. And I hope you enjoy watching the CrossFit Games. It's always a highlight of the year. All right, see you in the next one. Ciao.